Hey guys, this is Patrick from STH. Today, we're going to have our first installment of Project STH. Now, before we get to any comments, I wholeheartedly agree that I have absolutely no creativity in creating project names. It is what it is. As a quick background, in November 2020, I hit the point where I wanted to do something outside of our normal hands-on hardware coverage and something that's more purposeful. Now, I get absolutely tons of pitches from companies where they are donating money or goods like servers to universities. And, frankly, I just never want to cover those because it seems to me like it's a big company giving something of value to a university that people that are in, the top 10% of opportunities in the world will be able to access. And it just kind of doesn't kind of hit home for me. So we don't cover those. But what I do want to tell the story of is of the people who are going out beyond their day jobs and really bringing access and opportunity through technology to different parts of the world that just wouldn't have that otherwise. If you're watching this video, then you clearly have some access to technology. But just remember that it's not 10 people in the world that don't have access to YouTube. It's not 10,000 or 10 million. It's more than 1 in 10 people in the world that do not have access to even see things like YouTube. And there are plenty of reasons behind that. But this series is dedicated to the courageous individuals who seek to give opportunity through and access to technology to people that just don't have it otherwise. So to that end, I started reaching out to a number of the companies that we work with, and I gave them a set of criteria. First, it must be hands-on. This can't be a cash or goods gift. I really want hands-on people helping people. Second, it must be people helping a severely underserved segment, or really what I hope to get to is helping folks in the developing world get access to technology. And the third one is it must be employees doing this outside of their normal work. I don't necessarily want to have the social outreach team of a big company that we're highlighting. What I really want is people that are working in these tech companies that are taking time out of their lives and their busy schedules to go and help others. Specifically, what I wanted to do was get the story of how these individuals were able to observe a need, how they acted and what they did to act on that need. And then finally, what I wanted to do was also go into how did they overcome the inertia of not doing anything to go and actually start helping others. And because this is perhaps the most purposeful thing that we can do as a team, I have told everybody that works with STH that I want this to be a monthly series. I don't necessarily know if we're going to be there in the first half of this year, but hopefully by the end of this year, we will be at a monthly series clip. And just to explain how passionate I am about this project, I went to our external marketing firm that handles all of the marketing and sales and stuff that happens on STH so we can maintain editorial independence. And I gave them a challenge. So back in November 2020, I said, hey, if you guys can hit a certain level of revenue this year, we're going to give 1% of that revenue back to the causes that we're going to highlight in this People Helping People project. Now, of course, I can't fund this if we're not turning a profit. So to Virginia and her team, it's all up to you. No pressure there. Our first feature is on Jolene Begay, who's an Intel engineer by day, but also helped to bring STEM education to the Navajo community. Now, we're not going to get into the why or how there are Native American tribes and reservations. That's far too big of a topic for us to cover in a video. And frankly, I'm not the right person to go give that history. But I do realize that we have viewers and readers from outside the US. So for those folks, there is a system in place in the United States where the folks that called North America home prior to waves of migrations are able to have largely autonomous communities that are able to live in the rich traditions handed down through generations. The system is not perfect by any means, but it does set up the challenge that I think Jolene saw. For the purposes of this feature, the important background is that these Native American tribes and communities tend to have less opportunities for STEM education than we would see in most other parts of the US. And that includes, inner cities and rural areas of the US. It's just a different level. With that background, I hopped on a Microsoft Teams call with Jolene. So let's get to that. Hey, Jolene, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background?
So I've been an Intel employee for now 20 years. I'm currently a R&D engineer. I'm born and raised on the Navajo Reservation from a small area called Chinle, Arizona, which is the northern part of Arizona.
And so could you just kind of tell us a little bit about, what you saw the need was in your community?
So this idea of STEM was non-existent when I was 11 years old. I was not aware of what engineering was. I was not aware of who Intel was. And so when I was first introduced to my first computer in sixth grade by my computer class teacher, Miss Beeson, one of our projects was to write a story with options to create art images. My only option available back then was bright green text and images. So I wrote a story of a turtle moving from one place to another. I chose a turtle because it was easy, a simple shape to create. Using the only available color option was the bright green text editor. So my sixth grade computer class sparked my curiosity and interest. And that's what really got me hooked into technology. I wanted to understand how this gigantic computer worked. And knowing and reflecting of how I grew up, that's really what drove me to provide a resource of some type in relations to bringing the awareness of what STEM is and who Intel is to the Native American communities. I wanted kids such as myself to believe that they can also pursue these same opportunities.
Great. And, I guess we have a lot of readers that are outside of the U.S. as well. Could you just give us a little bit of background about, is STEM education widespread in the Native American communities you work with?
So growing up on the Navajo Reservation, again, I didn't grow up with engineers in my family or had resources to what engineering entailed. And to this day, lack of resources and low percentages of role models are scarce. So internet capability, high-tech equipment, updated software, STEM educators are really key pillars to STEM knowledge expanding. And without these vital necessities, it's hard to bridge this type of learning for schools on the Native communities. So for Native youth living in these rural areas, STEM resources are really scarce. Many families still live without running water and or electricity, and these families depend on their youth to help with their rigorous daily survival chores,
Mm-hmm.
which consist of hauling water, hauling wood, tending to their livestock, their sheep, their cattle, their horses, and caring for the younger siblings or elderly grandparents and parents.
And so I guess, one of the things that if you were outside of the U.S., you may think that everyone in the U.S. Or in the borders of the United States, lives like they live in New York City or San Francisco or something like that. But that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, that's not the case. In many Native communities, again, with those simple living resources that we have access to, running water, electricity, those components make a huge difference in how we conduct our daily lives. And without internet capability, a lot of these kids struggle to have access to the outside STEM learning that is so easily found in the city life.
So I think you kind of gave a little bit about yourself and about what you've seen as a challenge. Could you tell us a little bit about your program, Empower You?
So Empower You really came based off of my reflection and on my upbringing and the type of resources that I had growing up. I wished, when I was younger, I had access to resources of engineering, resources to what engineering was or is, and who, high-tech companies are, such as Intel. So my passion expanded on this. I wanted to bring this change to the Native communities. I wanted to inspire these youth who desperately need those STEM role models. So to share my story with those I can directly relate to, I joined and led a Intel ERG, which is an employee resource group. And through this leadership, I solidified a network of Native STEM leaders. And I was excited to bring them on board about this idea of an outreach program specifically targeting Native American youth. And so through this, all I was lacking was a Native youth audience. And after developing this Empower You program, I was ready to share the story and to hopefully inspire the students.
Hey, Jolene, could you give us a little background for Empower You?
So after envisioning bridging a new way of thinking, I provided this idea to others and really wanted to bridge that concept by providing a resource that Native American youth need more of. And Empower You entails having that direct connection with the youth. So capturing my audience, this captures my audience on a personal level. I introduce myself in my native language, identifying my four clans. So my roots. I share my childhood background. Growing up on the rural reservation, my paternal grandmother had no running water or electricity. And I faced these type of living conditions, and I'm not ashamed of any of them. These childhood experiences molded me to feel empowered to overcome these challenges. And this is really what I encourage the youth to embrace. Don't be ashamed of where you come from, the struggles we've all managed to get through, and just believe that we can overcome those challenges. So bringing a new concept of learning and the importance of science, technology, engineering, and math was the primary goal. So I did this by sharing my pathway that led me to my current role as an Intel engineer. I provide an insight on what Intel creates. A lot of individuals in rural areas don't know who high-tech companies are. So I wanted to enlighten that. So a broad focus was put on how Intel creates technology that enriches the lives of every person on Earth. And I show them examples of the type of cool, fun technology that we develop. So most importantly, I'm a hands-on learner, and this captures, the youth, and the youth love building and creating. So I really empower their minds with a really fun hands-on activity. So each child builds a simple robot using a toothbrush head, a 5-volt cell battery, electrical tape, and a pager vibrator. So I explain the flow of electricity and the results of that. And in the end, they get to create a little robot that moves around. So it captures everybody's interest, a lot of laughter going on, and just a lot of excitement behind that. So my ultimate goal with this program is to directly relate to the youth, inspire them, empower them to believe they can become engineers. And I envision the percentage of Native STEM leaders increasing, whether it happens in my lifetime or the next. And we need these role models for our future STEM leaders.
So those robots are very much like your turtle.
Oh, yeah. That's a good way to compare that. Yeah. I didn't even think about it. Mm-hmm.
And hey,
Mm-hmm.
could you give us a little bit of, a background on, you've mentioned your observation, you've mentioned what the program is, but there's a big difference between when you start out and you say, hey, I see a need to help people, or I've experienced something, and that's what, has kind of shown me that there is a need. You have now taken a step and actually created something, but there had to be a moment of inertia where you had to overcome the fact that it's easy to not do anything. So how did you really go beyond that, just sitting back in your chair and not doing anything, to actually, taking the initiative to go out and start Empower You?
So one item I had to get over for me was fear, fear of failure. I really had to get over that idea that, okay, even though if I fail, you know, um, there has to be success somewhere. So I really had to brace myself and tell myself and get that support, executive support in my company is amazing. And once I got that support and felt that, that pathway can be bright, I just took the reins and went forward with it and said, this is something I envision happening. This is something I'm truly passionate about. And I saw that desire need to bring this change. And I want to be a part of that evolution of bringing STEM to Native youth.
So Jolene, I know, you started with Empower You, but your next program is called Native American Coders. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So through my leadership with Empower You efforts, one of my Intel mentors, Rudy Hacker, I shared these efforts with him. And the minute I shared it with him, he looks at me and he tells me, we need to show this and we need to present this to our Intel CEO. I thought he lost his mind, that he was crazy. But in early 2015, our Intel executives approved our outreach proposals that was developed by Rudy Hacker and I. And we were granted $250,000 to implement a 3-year STEM pilot program in the northern part of Arizona on the Navajo Reservation. So this partnership with the 3 selected high schools, Chinle High School, Gray Hills Academy, and Monument Valley High School, allowed Intel to implement computer science learning as an elective course in their schools. So external tech partners also involved were Cisco, Code.org, and the 3rd year of this program, a nonprofit organization called ACES, which is the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, joined as an affiliate partner. Intel publicly announced this in Window Rock during the honorary Navajo Code Talker annual celebration in August of 2015. And after it was publicly announced, it was a rigorous game plan to implement all these steps. And that's when the real work began. We had to seek out hiring educators, 1 educator per school. We also had to get the educators trained, and this training was provided by Code.org. And all the educators were provided their material, the resources. And then we had to evaluate the schools and structure full computer science labs. And Intel provided each school with high-tech equipment, computers, printers, wireless mice, keyboards, Windows software, robotic kits. And our other partner, Cisco, funded each school with telepresence equipment and software. So in 2016 of August, computer science began in 3 schools. In May of 2019, the pilot program comes to an end with the results of 340 plus registered high school students registered through this computer science program. And from this, approximately 15 students completed all 3 years of computer science, and approximately 7 were going to pursue a STEM college field of study. So 2 of these 3 high schools continue to offer computer science as a course of study. We have now 4 computer science educators at 2 of the 3 schools. And we had a big amount of Intel volunteer grant funds that were provided to the schools for any Intel volunteer in this program throughout the 3 years.
So, hey, Jolene, that's awesome. And let me just ask a question. Before this program happened, I mean, these schools didn't offer computer science. I mean, this just wasn't there's no opportunity for that in these communities, right?
Computer science is brand new on the Navajo Reservation, entire Navajo Reservation. Yes, it was non-existent.
Jolene, that's absolutely great. So I just wanted to see, there are a lot of folks, I think, that read STH that may see communities, they may have come from communities, or they may see communities that are in need. And I just wanted to see if you have any advice for those folks that see a need but haven't taken that next step of taking action.
I think one of the biggest suggestions I can offer is to at least take a step to get engaged with the community to learn, right? In the Navajo culture, we have traditions, we have our culture defined. And to bring Intel colleagues to the Navajo Reservation was a transition, not only for the Navajo people, but for Intel and colleagues. So I really had to be sensitive to both parties and getting them engaged and really understanding the culture of each community. Just, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions and feel comfortable. Once you get that comfort zone with the individuals you'll be dealing with directly, I think just the work just comes naturally, and any type of change, positive change, especially with education, the communities embrace that. So, being those role models and being those individuals who cheer the youth on to embrace a new way of learning is much needed.
Hey, Jolene, that is an absolutely great story and great advice for STH readers and our viewers.
I appreciate the opportunity and really, want to thank you for allowing me to share my story. Each one of us has a story behind us. Once we share, we relate to somebody, anything can happen.
Thank you, Jolene, for joining us today. Really appreciate it and all the work that you're doing to help others.
Thank you.
Again, I wanted to say thank you to Jolene for sharing her story and helping to inspire others. I also want to give a shout out to Intel for helping Jolene, not only supporting her through this work, allowing her to have the time to go do this, but also supporting with resources. Frankly, if every company out there went and helped their employees go help folks that didn't have that kind of opportunity, I think the world would be a better place. I know this is different from our standard hardware coverage, but to me, frankly, this is more impactful. We have big plans for this series. We just kind of need a certain global pandemic to end so we can get out there and do it. Feel free to leave respectful comments below on the series, but also if you have a story to share yourself, or you know of coworkers or know of a story and want us to highlight it, feel free to leave those in the comments. I will definitely read them. And if you made it this far, I ask that you give Jolene in this video a like just to support the great work that she's doing. Also, you can click subscribe, turn on those notifications so you can see whenever we come out with great new videos in this series. As always, thanks for watching and have an awesome day.